Effects of biodiversity loss. When we think of the word biodiversity, it is easy to believe that this term only refers to plants and animals. But, in truth, biodiversity includes a number of different aspects, such as genetic diversity and species diversity. Effects of biodiversity loss impacts all areas, including food production, medicine development, and even climate change. In this blog post, we will take a closer look at some examples of what happens when biodiversity loss occurs. Effects of biodiversity loss on human health. The changes in our environment have drastically changed the way we live, and it has led to a significant decrease in biodiversity. This loss of diversity is having severe impacts on human health. We are all vulnerable to the myriad of effects that a loss in biodiversity has on our health. Biodiversity is essential for life, and without it, we will not be able to survive as humans. Currently, significant diseases such as malaria can no longer be fought by modern medicine alone. Imagine how much more dangerous this would become if there were an epidemic. As the world's biodiversity continues to decrease, so too will our health. Scientists have already linked a wide range of human illnesses and disorders with the loss of natural habitats for humans or other species. For example, one study shows that maternal depression increases in areas where there is more air pollution from fossil fuels than on average. This lack of clean air can lead to brain development problems which may cause mood swings later on in life, as well as learning disabilities that inhibit proper cognitive function during adolescence leading up into adulthood when these skills are necessary for success at work and school. Adapted. Effects of biodiversity loss on ecosystem. Our planet is a beautiful place to live and work. However, biodiversity loss will lead to many negative consequences on our ecosystem, such as the depletion of clean water for drinking or damage in agricultural production due to a lack of pollinators. The disappearance of biodiversity affects the health and stability of ecosystems. If there are few or no species in an ecosystem, it can become susceptible to widespread problems such as disease outbreaks. The world we inhabit has seen its fair share of change since humans first started settling down here about 10,000 years ago, but it's only been within the last few decades that everything changed at once. Rapid climate change had humanity scrambling with ways they could reverse this course before things got worse beyond repair. Nowadays, there are discussions happening all over the globe, from government officials trying their hardest to salvage what they can while making sure everyone gets through these changes unscathed by them, too. Effects of biodiversity loss on animals. The loss of biodiversity is having a significant effect on animals. The way the world has changed in recent years, it's no surprise that some wild species are finding themselves at risk for extinction as they can't adapt to these changes fast enough or find food sources readily available without herbicides and pesticides interfering with their natural habitats. Researchers from the University of Queensland recently concluded that animal species who live in habitats containing greater diversity are able to survive better than those residing among fewer varieties, and further research should be conducted on how our environment is affecting this phenomenon. Effects of biodiversity loss on plants. There are many ways that the loss of biodiversity can harm plants. For example, if a native plant species isn't found on an island because it has been replaced by invasive ones, then any animal that needs to eat from those trees will be out of luck. Biodiversity is essential for maintaining ecological balance and equilibrium in our planet's ecosystems. As such, its detrimental effects when we lose these precious habitats should not go ignored or unmentioned. Scientists have been examining the effects of biodiversity on plants. They've found that in a wide range of species, loss of diversity has led to an increase in vulnerability to climate change-related stresses such as drought and heat waves. Effects of biodiversity loss on aquatic life. The world is a fragile place. The loss of biodiversity affects not only plants but also aquatic life in ways that are hard to predict or even understand fully at this point in time. The natural beauty and diversity of the planet create habitat for countless organisms which feed off each other's existence. Some may be less obvious than others, such as those found underwater. Without diverse habitats, we will lose many species which might never have been discovered by humanity if they were left undisturbed inside their hidden homes deep underwater where no one can see them alive before it is too late, losing all chances to study these creatures' biology and habits firsthand. Effects of biodiversity loss. Effects of biodiversity loss on agriculture. Loss of biodiversity has a negative impact on agriculture. The more species there are, the greater diversity and resilience to changes in farming practices that we have for our food sources. With less plant variety, Crops can be wiped out by disease or insects faster than they would if many plants were available as options. This makes it hard for farmers to maintain a sustainable farm with any level of profit because so much is lost when one crop fails. Loss of biodiversity creates an environment where only certain types of foods will grow well, which then limits what humans eat, too, meaning people who live off their farms might not eat anything but apples all winter long. The loss of biodiversity is a significant issue for agriculture. The introduction or elimination of certain plants and animals can have dramatic effects on what crops are available to farmers, how much they must invest in pesticide use, which pests will be able to thrive without competition from other species, etc. Effects of biodiversity loss on global warming. Global warming is not the only thing that will be affected by shrinking biodiversity. As it gets hotter, plants and animals are dying off at alarming rates, which means there is less food for people to eat as well. The loss of global diversity has been linked to other environmental problems such as climate change because when temperatures rise too high in certain areas, many species may die out, including ones we rely on for sustenance like fish stocks or crops needed to feed humans. Effects of biodiversity loss on climate change. The atmosphere isn't the only thing that's losing its natural diversity. As a result of human interference, there are many plants and animals around us with less genetic variation than they would have had in nature alone. Loss of biodiversity due to human activities like deforestation and ocean acidification is not only a problem for the animals themselves but also has an impact on climate change. We are losing too many species that help offset our release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, exacerbating global warming in turn, while their presence would have helped stabilize temperatures by absorbing some CO2. These impacts extend beyond just one region as trees provide shade which helps regulate water flow during dry seasons affecting rainfall patterns elsewhere, such as Central Africa, where we already see changes in temperature. Effects of biodiversity loss on the economy. An often overlooked impact of the loss of biodiversity, such as from climate change and habitat destruction, is a drastic decrease in economic productivity. One study found that if all species were lost on Earth today, there would be an estimated staggering $33 trillion less value created through goods and services than what was generated before this mass extinction event. Climate impacts like severe drought or excessive flooding have also been shown to result in decreased agricultural production, which can lead to higher food prices for consumers worldwide, impacting their purchasing power while reducing available funds for other sectors within our economy, like healthcare. Effects of biodiversity loss on the ozone layer. The ozone layer can be disrupted by increased levels of CO2 in the atmosphere. Scientists are exploring how biodiversity is worsening this problem and even what we should do about it. Biodiversity loss can contribute to a damaged ozone layer since it affects both plant life and pollution levels in the soil. The more diverse an ecosystem becomes with more variation between each organism within its boundaries, the less likely one type of living being will become so dominant as to create issues for other classes like polluting soils or consuming all available resources without any competition from others. Effects of biodiversity loss on acid rain. Acid rain is a natural consequence of the growing carbon dioxide emissions. The problem arises when these CO2s are released into the water that then leaves an acidic residue on land, which has been shown to cause plant death and soil erosion due to loss in biodiversity. Loss of biodiversity has been linked with the change in pH levels that cause acid rain. It's not for sure whether this is just an indirect correlation or if these organisms have some way to affect the environment around them, but either way, we need more research on how they may be affecting our world and what possible solutions exist so as to solve any future ecological problems before they get out of hand. Effects of biodiversity loss on non-living things. One of the most critical environmental changes caused by the loss of biodiversity is a global change in rock composition. As an example, while granite was once found only on Earth's surface, it can now be mined with some depth because there are no longer animals present to keep minerals and other elements from eroding away over time. Researchers in New Zealand have noted a decline in biodiversity on the slopes and peaks. The loss is due to invasive species, including rats that feast on native bird populations. The population has also been compromised by pollution from agriculture and forestry operations as well as climate change impacts like increased temperature during summer months which causes snowmelt earlier than usual. resulting in environmental changes such as landslides or avalanches becoming more frequent at lower elevations where they were previously uncommon events, causing dramatic effects for higher elevation residents who are generally dependent upon an ecosystem-based economy, with many people making their living off tourism-related businesses without access to other jobs opportunities, while others make money through farming products grown only locally. These low elevation farmers need water year-round, but because of winter